Hello, good people. It is Todd Shannon, data scientist, social commentator, getter of buckets, and today we have got to talk about Candace Owens and how she is completely off her rocker. She is completely broken. Broken by who? Broken by what? Well, Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee apparently lives rent-free in Candace Owens' head because she is still fuming mad over something that happened a long time ago between her and Seth Dillon. Now, Seth Dillon runs the Babylon Bee, apparently, and I don't know a lot about Seth Dillon, but I thought this conversation was interesting and ironic, and I thought that we would highlight it because Seth is apparently someone who Candace Owens thinks betrayed her, right? And you're going to find out as we get toward the end of this video why that's ultra ironic coming from Candace Owens. But let's maybe catch you up on why this story is a thing in the first place. So I want to show you this little thing here. First of all, this is absolutely hilarious. Okay, this is absolutely hilarious. And here is a picture of Candace Owens. This is something that the Babylon Bee put out. They said, Candace Owens horrified to learn that Christmas was started by the birth of a Jew. And first of all, not only is this hilarious, right? But you have to know that the Babylon Bee basically made this joke about Candace Owens because eventually she became just this kind of deranged pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas propagandist, as a gentleman named Aquarius Wave, who I watch quite often nowadays. He calls her Candace Qatari Owens. It's like she's getting propaganda talking points from Qatar. And basically, they decided that they would put this joke out to take a stab at her and how absurd her anti-Israel propaganda began to become. And she was fuming mad on this. They had a little spat on X. They were going back and forth. She was like, "Well, why don't you become and we can have a live record. We can have a talk about why this is inappropriate or something like that." I'm paraphrasing, so don't quote me on this. And Seth Dillon was like, "No, we're not gonna do that. We don't explain jokes. If you have to explain a joke, then it's not funny, so we're just not going to do that." But I want to talk about why Seth Dillon and the Babylon Bee in particular had a problem with Candace Owens. Not only was she doing the whole anti-Israel, anti-Jew thing, but she started catching on to this little phrase that kind of started to trend on Twitter where people would say Christ is king. Now, Christ is king is, as a Christian, is an ultimate true statement. It is absolutely true. As a matter of fact, I was in the gas station this morning and I saw a gentleman who walked into the gas station and he had a t-shirt that said, "Every knee will bow." And I just looked at him and I said, yes, sir. Every knee certainly will bow. And he looked at me and said, "You doggone right." And we just kept it moving, right? We understood. We know the lingo. So somebody saying Christ is king, there's nothing wrong with that. But here's the problem. And this is a big problem because this trend was started by a person who is an absolute racist and an absolute bigot, a guy by the name of Nick Fuentes. Now, I'm going to show you this little Nick Fuentes. Basically, they call them groypers. This is kind of new to me, the whole groyper thing. I've known about Nick Fuentes. I know that he's a racist. I know that he's an anti-Semite and all that stuff. And as a conservative, I don't throw those terms around lightly. I mean, Charlie Kirk basically banned Nick Fuentes from Turning Point USA events because of his extreme views, right? So Charlie Kirk kicked you out. Charlie Kirk's a pretty patient guy, pretty good guy. I like Charlie Kirk. If Charlie Kirk says you're being racist, and Charlie Kirk is the king of knocking down false accusations of racism from the left, then there's probably something there, right? Okay, so, and more specifically, the anti-Semitism. So I decided to go to the Google machine and ask the Google machine what's going on. Now, take this with a grain of salt, but I think this is probably a good synopsis. It says, the groypers. So I asked the Google machine, did the groypers start the Christ is king trend? And this is what the Google machine said. It says, the groypers, a far-right group centered around Nick Fuentes, have been associated with promoting the use of the phrase Christ is King as a rallying cry, especially in online spaces like X. Fuentes himself has claimed credit for the phrase's use in this context, even linking it to the goal of identifying Jews and Jewish sympathizers online. So the idea here, supposedly, is that this would trigger the Jews and the Jew sympathizers, apparently, right? Because you can't have Jew sympathizers. Really weird stuff. And just in case just to give you a brief flavor of Nick Fuentes and the type of, kind of lowlife that he is. I don't like to use strong language like that, but that's kind of what he is. He's kind of a lowlife. Let's have a quick look at Nick Fuentes, some of his finest work.
For change. We are hurtling towards a war with Iran, a third war in the Persian Gulf, over nuclear stuff, over nuclear weapons that they may or may not have. How is it possible? One answer: the Jews. That's how it's happening. And it's not even a secret.
The Jews, right? Listen, whenever it's so, it's kind of like using the N word with the hard ER. Okay. When somebody says the Jews like that, you know what they are. You know who they are, right? I don't want to give Nick Fuentes too much oxygen because he's not a good person. He needs actually to be born again. He needs to be saved. I pray that he does actually come to know Christ, because he thinks he's a Christian. He's absolutely not. But they started that cold phrase, Christ is King. And apparently Seth Dillon, when talking with Candace about this whole thing where she's doing the Christ is King thing, she's saying a lot of weird anti-Jew stuff, he kind of took issue with that. And Candace was having none of it. So let's listen to Candace explain why supposedly Seth Dillon betrayed her, which is a bunch of nonsense.
I'm so grateful for last year because there was this divine clarity that came into our lives. Who are our real friends, right? Yes. Who are our real friends? And
by our, I guess she's talking about her and Tucker. I don't know.
These other people, how could we have ever thought that they were our friends? Like, even waiting to see who's going to speak out and say this is wrong. Like, the number one litmus test is, let's not forget, before we even get down to the books that I've read and what I think now, all I said was Christ is King. Okay. This was like, it's anti-Semitic, it's layered, it's this, it's that. And there were people who I would have been like, I've always been friendly with, who were making videos legitimatizing that. Like, she didn't say it directed to anybody, but it could have been kind of implied. And this is why you shouldn't say Christ is King. And we're looking around going, what is going on right now? What is happening? And I think at that moment,
one of the craziest controversies I've ever seen.
Controversy.
So there were people on the so-called right who attacked you for saying Christ is King?
Of course there were. And
the context matters. Christ is King. You know what? You know what would have been just as effectively semantically equivalent, but what you could have disassociated yourself from racists and anti-Semites like Nick Fuentes, as you could have said, Jesus is Lord. Semantically equivalent. I mean, it has the same effect. But now you're separating yourself from that silliness. But as you see, and what Candace Owens has shown, is that she doesn't want to separate herself from people like Nick Fuentes, because she has her views are very much aligned with people like Nick Fuentes. Interestingly enough, even though he thinks, he has some odd views about blacks. And anyway, I'm just going to leave that there, but let's let her continue.
And one of those people was, and I've been very vocal about it because he's such a bad person, Seth Dillon. And what makes him such a bad person is I really stood up for Seth Dillon when it mattered.
I did too.
When it really mattered, and he thought he was going to lose everything. Yep. And I did it privately, no fanfare, just because I wanted the right thing to be done to him. And at a moment, if he had just given me silence, that would have been friendship in that moment. Like, the whole world is coming after me. I just lost my job. I'm trending, from here to Timbuktu. If you had just been quiet and said nothing about Christ is King, I would have been like, that was nice. Thank you for not adding.
Here's what's so interesting about that is that when Candace lost her job at the Daily Wire, she was out here celebrating like, oh, jailbird's free. I'm free. I'm free from the having to do the Jewish tap dance with Ben Shapiro and have to pretend like I like Israel and that I'm for the nation. I'm free, you know. Now I'm coming out like gangbusters, going to start my own thing. So was it good that you got released from Daily Wire, or was it not? Because now you're trying to pretend like this was like the lowest point of your life when it happened, you were celebrating. You know, you're going to have to choose one here, Candace. So that's a little odd.
To the chorus. No. He added to the chorus, and then would like privately try to message me to be like, well, and this was their whole big idea. They were attributing it to Nick Fuentes. And I had no idea that Nick Fuentes chanted Christ is King. And by the way, if he does chant Christ is King, good. That's a good thing. Like, I want everyone to be chanting Christ is King.
So interestingly enough, he tells her, so just look at the pattern here. Let me bring you in closer here. Let's look at the pattern with Candace. It's the same thing that happens with this Brigitte Macron lawsuit here. She gets information. She apparently she has a breathtaking ignorance about what's happening in the world. And so when somebody puts her on, right, they say, hey, we know, hey, Christ is King. No one's disputing that. As far as I understand, Babylon B is a Christian organization. They are Christians. Why would they have a problem with you saying Christ is King? Okay? No one's saying you should say Christ is not King. What they're saying is you're jumping onto a trend that was intentionally introduced as a kind of an anti-Semitic posture. And maybe you didn't know that. I don't know how you didn't know that, but whatever. I can imagine if you're Candace Owens and you're searching around on X for a bunch of anti-Semitic nonsense, that, hey, the algorithm will start to feed you that because that's, kind of what you did. And then you see the trend and you think that this is a cool thing. I'm going to say Christ is King because, forget those Jews. And you didn't even realize that I guess you inadvertently found your people, but Seth Dillon tried to warn you. Don't jump in this bandwagon. It's not what you think. It's more to it than what's on the surface. And what do you say? I don't have to do that. You didn't respect it. It's the same thing that happened apparently with the situation with Brigitte Macron, where you claim, you swear up and down that they provided you no evidence that Brigitte Macron actually might be who she says she is. And when it came out that they provided you the information that you said they didn't provide you, and then you still went along to publish falsehoods, that's how you got sued. Well, it's the same thing with this. He told you what the origins of that, and because you didn't want to accept that, now you're trying to act like he's in the wrong because he's separating himself from you. This is another thing here. I don't understand why Candace is trying to pretend like friendship requires that you basically sit back and be silent when somebody who's supposed to be your friend is doing something that they shouldn't be doing. That's not friendship. Apparently she thinks that's friendship. That's why she's okay with Kanye doing the pornography and blaspheming God, and she won't say anything about it. Apparently she's more loyal to Kanye than she is to Christ. She's saying Christ is King. Well, how come you won't say to Kanye, why don't you stop blaspheming and producing corn? Hey, Andrew Tate, why don't you stop pimping girls out and basically blaspheming God because he's a Muslim? Why don't you stop mocking Christianity? Oh, well, he's your friend, so you're supposed to ignore that? You've got an inverted sense of morality because maybe, here's a tip, Candace. The Bible actually says when Jesus was waiting, Jesus was somewhere and someone came to him and says, hey, your mother and your brother are out here waiting for you. And you know what Jesus said to them? He said, you know who my mother, my brother, my sister, and who my family is? They that do the will of my Father. Those who do the will of my Father, those are my people. I don't sit around and act like when people who are around me, when they're doing evil, I don't turn a blind eye to it by saying, they're my friends. Jesus said, those who do the will of my Father, that's my family. Those are my people. It doesn't mean you have to be malicious when you correct people. But it does mean that you're not going to sit here and tell me that you didn't say something about Kanye's evil and his degeneracy because you're his friend. That's a lie. You like the popularity and you like the profile, how Kanye raised your profile. You're loyal to him. You're more loyal to him than your so-called Christian standards. And it's totally fake and everyone can see it. But we're going to get to the whole issue of loyalty here in a minute because there's someone that you're going to hear from that has some contrary opinions about Candace Owens and while she's railing about the so-called disloyalty of Seth Dillon. But I'll give her a few more seconds of this nonsense and then we'll go to something else here.
But he basically,
it's like fundamental like Christianity.
Yeah. Exactly. It doesn't matter if Nick Fuentes is saying Jesus is king. He is. And so he was.
It matters. It matters if he's not saying it because he's actually promoting Christ, but actually doing it to kind of fish out the so-called Jew sympathizers.
Sort of saying to me that I would have to make a layered statement about Christ as king. And
he said that to you?
Very much came across. I said to him, I'll publish, because when he denied it publicly, I said, let me publish the text messages. And then he went radio silent because I don't lie. Okay. I don't lie. And he wanted me to make a statement against Groypers. So my whole world is coming down. And Seth Dillon's like, here's what you can do for me if you'd like a life raft. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's just tweet against the Groypers. And I was just like, seriously, Seth? F you.
Amazing. So let's just be clear here. Candace thought it was too much to ask to separate herself from people like Nick Fuentes. You know what's really interesting? Nick Fuentes, she tried to have Nick Fuentes on her platform recently to interview him, and she kind of went after him and saying that he was selfish and doing some stuff like that. And the next day, he absolutely, some of the most blatant and nasty disrespect. I won't even play it because it's vulgar and it's nasty. But Nick Fuentes basically ripped her a new one. So here, while she's trying to play nice with Nick Fuentes, but she got the ultimate smoke for Seth Dillon. Do you see why this is interesting? All because of supposed disloyalty. Speaking of disloyalty, this is what brings this full circle about her supposed issues with Seth Dillon, because Laura Loomer, and I didn't know this until recently, but apparently Laura Loomer, a political figure herself, knew Candace Owens before she was famous. So let's let Laura Loomer give her personal experience about how loyal a friend Candace Owens is, because she really thinks loyalty should be above all. So let's have a look and see what Laura Loomer says about Candace.
So have you guys ever collaborated, done anything?
So Candace and I used to be really good friends. I knew Candace before she was really ever famous. In fact, Candace and I and her previous boyfriend, before she, got engaged to George, we used to go out and have dinner when I lived in Westchester, because she used to live in Westchester. And, we would hang out. We'd have like sleepovers, and she actually picked me up when I had my wisdom teeth taken out years ago. Like, we were really good friends. Like, she picked me up from my surgery and brought me home. So
this is not a casual relationship, right? And like PBD is going to say, you let someone pick you up from getting your wisdom teeth out. That's probably somebody you have sleepovers like y'all are in junior high. Sounds like you're pretty good friends.
I mean, when somebody picks you up for wisdom teeth, that's best buddies for life. So I'm surprised.
Candace and I were really good friends. And, I was there at the same conference where I met O'Keefe, but years prior is where her career got started.
What was that turning point?
No, it was the David Horowitz Freedom Center conference in Palm Beach. Old school, yeah. And he obviously since passed away. But that's where her career got started, which is kind of ironic. Her career literally got started at a Jewish conference. I mean, that is a very Zionist, pro-Israel, counter-jihad, anti-Islam conference.
Candace owes a lot of basically every major stepping stone in Candace Owens' career has been provided by a Jew. It's crazy. He started with this David Horowitz guy. Then she moved on to Dennis Prager. Then she moved on to Ben Shapiro. And now she got nothing but smoke for the Jews. It's more than ironic.
And they would invite a lot of speakers, and Charlie was one of their speakers. And I remember I was in the lobby, and Candace had shown up, and at that time, her handle on X was Red Pill Black, and she, had garnered the attention of Paul Joseph Watson and InfoWars for some videos as a Black conservative talking about, just Black liberals and why she's a conservative and Black. And Charlie met her at this Horowitz conference and offered her a job right on the spot. I mean, I literally am the person that broke the story about it, because I was there when I witnessed it. He offered her a position, and then they announced it. She started working for Turning Point, and then it was shortly after that Kanye West tweeted what he tweeted about her. I forget what it was exactly. It was like, I like the way, or I love the way that Candace Owens thinks. And then she kind of became this overnight sensation, and got over 1 million followers, and then had a meeting with Kanye, yay, dead naming, and Charlie out in Los Angeles. And then they were at like TMZ headquarters or something, as the story goes. And yeah, then she exploded, and that was that. But at that time, right, she was asking me for advice. Oh, how do I grow my career? How do I do this? How do I do that? And I remember she sent me the tweet when Kanye posted it and asked me if I would share it. But then when...
So Laura Loomer helped her get off the ground, shared the tweet, basically was there for her while she was coming into her own, was supportive of her. Now watch this.
And I got canceled everywhere. She didn't do anything to help me. Like, she wouldn't even have me on her show. She had access to all these shows via Turning Point and PragerU and the various shows that she had, and never once would have me on the program to talk about it. So we just I guess our friendship kind of fizzled out, and we follow each other still, occasionally have conversations, but it's become kind of contentious because a couple of months ago, she, in my DMs, falsely accused me of dancing for Israel, which I think is kind of a crazy thing to say to somebody, because I'm not Israeli. I'm an American citizen. I'm Jewish, but certainly not a dual citizen. I'm not even Israeli.
So let's just try to get our minds around the irony of what we just listened to. Laura Loomer says her and Candace were really good friends, and she was Candace's friend before Candace was famous. And then when Laura Loomer got canceled, she got kicked off of X. They were saying she's a far-right conspiracy theorist, racist. This is the way that the mainstream media portrayed her. They were calling her racist, and here Candace, the Black friend, who was her Black friend before Candace could do anything for her, did not come to her defense, did not come to her aid. She had access to all these shows. She wouldn't put Laura Loomer on. And she's lecturing Seth Dillon about loyalty, about friendship. It's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible to me. And I wouldn't even go into there's some other stuff where apparently Gavin McInnes, who also helped, and shout out to Aquarius Wave. He's a YouTuber here on this platform, and he actually has done some really good information about this. He's where I actually initially saw this Laura Loomer interview that she did with Patrick Bet-David. But she even stabbed Seth Dillon in the back. I mean, not Seth Dillon, Gavin McInnes in the back. And when he needed help, when he got deplatformed, not helping him. So here, she's got no problem cozying up to Nick Fuentes and having people like him on her show, while at the same time giving the Heisman, the no thank you to people who were her friends since day one. And I hate to pass judgment, but Candace Owens just seems to be a fraud. She's everything that she accuses others of being. And I just find it so interesting and ironic that Candace continues to go down this downward spiral. And I really pray that she comes out of it. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when she's going to hit rock bottom. But this lawsuit with Brigitte Macron and these other things could very well be the end of the end of her credibility, end of her career. We'll see what happens, but that's going to be all on her. So I thought I'd share that. I thought this was interesting. I think Candace is in a lot of trouble, and I think she needs a lot of help. And I pray, honestly, to be quite honest, I pray that she comes to a real conversion. I pray that she comes to a saving knowledge of Jesus, because I think she's got this weird kind of pseudo Christianity, kind of blend of political ideology and faux conservatism. I think Tucker, there's a lot of that stuff on the right. To be quite honest, a lot of people who are religious but not actually in a relationship with God, and so it comes out in all kinds of weird, kind of deformed ways. But I pray that she gets turned around. But anyway, let me know what you think. If you're new to this channel, I appreciate you sticking around. This is kind of a long video, but this is the type of stuff that I do. If you like it, please stick around. Let someone else know, and let me know in the comments what you think. You think I'm being too harsh on Candace? You think that she's being fair to Seth Dillon, or not? I'd like to know about it. Let me know. And until next time, friends, God bless you.